Welcome to the Commissaire Commentaries, Episode 2. We are your hosts, Marcy Weiss and Ryan Fu. I just want to quickly share this photo. This is Marcy and I together at summer camp at Mount Sequoia last month. And if you notice, we're the only two geeking out in USA Cycling uniforms in this photo. But we had a lot of fun last month, brainstorming a lot of ideas, and we met our guests for today, and including our future lineup of guests as well. For those tuning in for the first time, the Commissaire Commentaries is a podcast by USA Cycling officials for USA Cycling officials, riders, and the cycling community as a whole. We are here to discuss various cycling and officiating topics and explore who our officials are, why they do what they do, and what we can all continue to do to help our program thrive. I'm now going to pass it over to our talented creative director, Marcy, to share with us a little bit about this and the upcoming episodes, and then introduce our guest tonight.
Hey, everybody. So we are starting tonight a 3-episode mini-series, and this is number 1 of Safe, Fair, and Fun. So this will be Safe tonight. You will probably hear the term Safe, Fair, and Fun if you have ever been at a Cat C officiating course or listened to any official talk about officiating, probably ever. Super quick, easy phrase that we all love. And we like to say safe, fair, and fun is what we like to do for an event in that order. So we're starting out this week with Dave Fowkes, a man very well versed in safety, both professionally and in the cycling world. So Dave currently lives in Illinois and officiates at the national level around the country, and he has been an official for 27 years, quite a bit of experience. So his professional background is as a nationally certified and state athletic trainer for 35 years and 20 years as a firefighter and EMT paramedic. He has not only seen it all professionally, but seen the cycling community evolve as we learn more about health, safety, and how UCI, the international regulations, and the USA cycling regulations here in the States can influence how those regulations work together with understanding and growing as safety changes, and we continue to make everything safer for our riders, officials, and everyone involved in our events. So without further ado, Dave, how did you get involved with cycling and how did you start officiating?
Well, my involvement started many years ago, even before my officiating. I actually raced. I did okay. I ended up as a Cat 2. So that's how it kind of started. It came after a knee injury. During soccer, I played soccer, kind of on above the collegiate level and into the professional level, and had a knee injury and it required surgery. And so I started riding a bike and loved it and kept on going. And then I was also working 3 jobs at the time. And so training was kind of tough. And then I was going for my master's and I couldn't train anymore. And someone said, you should try officiating. My first officiating exposure was awesome. It was a rain out at the track. That was my first time officiating. So, just started from there and just kept on going. So that was many moons ago. And that's how I got into cycling first as a competitor and then as an official.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I feel like just to keep track, Ryan, our first episode with Noreen, she was one that was dragged along as a spectator and said, "Well, I'm here, I might as well." And Dave came in as an athlete, and then real life hit a little bit, and came in as an official to stay around. So I feel like those are 2 really big ones that that we're gonna keep hearing. So I'm just keeping track.
Actually, it was my two entities coming together. Like I said, I worked many jobs. One of them was as an EMT,
Oh, okay.
and I worked at the velodrome here in Northbrook, and they had citizen racing. So I said, hey, can I race while I work? And they said, sure. So I actually raced while I was an EMT, and if any crash happened, I'd have to stop in a race and take care of the crash. But that's how I started. And then Thursday nights they needed officials, and I said, oh, that sounds like fun. It looks like fun. So I actually started racing, and anytime something happened, I would always help out. But so the EMT side of it went away, but the racing side of it stayed, and then I just kept going. So my first big exposure was on the track. So that was fun.
At its base, let's start out with base safety. How do you define a safe bicycle event, just at its core, at its simplest?
The simplest. During a bike race, accidents are going to happen. The riders are going to determine what they're going to do. They're going to do some silly things. They're going to put their bikes in places that they really shouldn't. I think the safe event is outside of the realm of the actual race course. It's keeping the racers safe within their course, but also then keeping everybody safe around them. So fans aren't walking across the course at wrong times. Cars don't get on the course, when or different things like that. So it's allowing with we have safe, fair, and fun. We have safety, so we have to keep our courses safe so that our riders can be uh, fairly competitive and having fun while they're out there. And what they do out there, crashing or whatever, we don't have control over that. But what we do have control over is making sure that our courses are, I would say, we'll use the term buttoned up. So it's safe for the riders to compete while knowing that that we have their back and trying to keep them as safe as possible out on the course while they do their thing.
Right. And, ensuring that there are those resources should something go wrong. But absolutely, I agree with that about, the riders are going to do what the riders are going to do. But, as officials, it's making sure that buttoned up, I feel like, is an awesome way to describe it. With your specific experience in the medical field, how do you use that experience to ensure events are run safely, both differing between like a criterium and a road race, specifically using that medical perspective?
Melting them two together is challenging. To have the medical and knowledge, and then turning that into bike talk, and vice versa, bike talk into medical and terminology. So I will talk to the sheriffs and the local police and give them a perspective of what I feel is safe, and then listen to them to say, this is our protocol, this is what we have to do, and I can't change that. And they're going to, if anything happens in a court of law, they're going to be judged on that protocol. So now, how do I melt that protocol into what we have as USA Cycling, what we feel is safe for the riders? So if they say we absolutely have to shut down the road when this accident happens, well, you try to talk and try to find a happy medium where they can do their job, but we can still have a bike event going forward. In a criterium, we know that riders are going to fall. They're going to hit the ground. They're going to take a few minutes to get, set up, and then they're going to get up and they're going to move on. The first aid personnel jumping on the course at that time. So you just talk to them. You say, this is what's going to happen. They are going to take a minute to get themselves, kind of orientated, and then they might get back up. And if they don't, then you turn the scene over to them. And once the scene is turned over to that entity, we as cycling officials no longer have control of it. But we can ahead of time ask them in a nice manner, because they're going to do their didactics. They're going to go through their blood pressures, their heart rates, and all. They're going to go through all that stuff. And I understand they need to do that. But what I ask them is, could they do that off the course so that we can continue racing? So,
Gotcha.
so you talk nicely to them. Say, I know we're not going to scoop and go. We're not going to load and go. That was a terminology we use. Load and go. If you hear that, then someone is really bad. But so we scoop them, we load, put them in, and we just get them off the course, and then they can do all the stuff that they need to do off the course, and we can button it back up. So, working within that protocol. Road racing, that's a little bit more difficult because we're out in the country at sometimes. And this happened even at Joe Martin when we had accidents and we only had one ambulance. So we talked to the ambulance service and say, at what point can we have a replacement ambulance and where can we meet them? And where are they coming from? And so you have to have that discussion ahead of time. And we had to have that happen where an ambulance did a transfer. So we always had an ambulance with us. So you have to have that discussion well in advance and have that set up. And what's another interesting thing is that you could go from one county to another county. Now you've got 2 county protocols. So this is especially if you're the chief referee, this is something that you talk to the race organization well in advance and say, okay, how many counties are we going through? What kind of EAPs, which is emergency action plans, and the event should have an emergency action plan. And say, okay, if this happens, then we're going to do this, and then you have the if and thens, and that's all set up. So having that kind of talk or knowledge, it's really helped. Even in local events, when we just have like a first aid tent and we do occurrence reports, you go over the occurrence reports with the medical personnel, and you tell them this is what our medical report is. And if they ever ask about HIPAA, there's actually a signature in there about HIPAA, so we can get all that information. So that's all taken care of. But so that's kind of what we go over.
Dave, I like some of the points you mentioned, and let's take a scenario. So let's say I'm a first-time chief referee at a 4-corner criterium at some industrial park, right? And the race hasn't started. I've looked through the promoter's checklist, right, for the permit, and I'm coming to you for advice, Dave. How should I have a safety conversation with the promoter? What are things you could provide some guidance on having this conversation before the race? Afterwards, on race day, what are some of the things that in your checklist that you're going to go over with the promoter on safety aspects?
The talk to the race organization is, how has this race played out in the past? What things have you seen? How can we strengthen that area? And then could we meet with the head people of your organization and go over different things and try to strengthen it by saying, okay, we really need 4 people at this corner, not just 2. And to the corner marshal or the head marshal, I need your strongest people, not a 15-year-old who's going to be on their phone the whole time playing games while people are walking across the street, which I've seen. So that's the kind of talk I would have. And so pre-race is with the organization, going over courses, and then just before the race, meeting with the marshal, the head marshal.
Do you have any other examples at a, again, local criterium, local time trial road race where there were promises or understandings made pre-race, and then you show up and you start going through your list and you say, this isn't what we agreed to? Do you recall any things you had to do to adjust the plan for that day? Or sure, hypothetical. Yeah.
No, you're right. One of the things was on the permits was the local EMS notified of this event? Well, what does every race director put? Yes. No, they weren't.
Of course, yeah.
I mean, I did it once when way back when, and I said, I'm going to call the fire department and call the hospital and see if they know this is happening. And they had no clue. So, um, we, again, if they say, yeah, what kind of, I always go over, what is your EAP? What's your emergency? And they say, well, we're going to have an ambulance on the, okay. So if you show up, like you said, Ryan, if you show up and it's not there, what are you going to do? Okay. Then you talk to them and say, how far away is the nearest EMS to our position? And then where do they transport? Um, if you're out in a road race, it could be sending up, you're setting up a helicopter landing zone. I'm serious. And it could be that bad. So if EMS is X number of, like 20 minutes away and a helicopter's 10 minutes away, I'm going with the helicopter. But that I've only I've actually had to do that, but it's talking to them, and the promises that were said, and then what you get, you have to work within there. And if you feel comfortable with hey, we have a first aid kit and we have people trained in first aid, and you're comfortable with that, versus a larger event, which most local events are, is just a first aid kit, and the rider can help themselves. If you're comfortable with that, that's fine. Or you could say, no, we need something more. And I've never had a cancel event, but I don't know. I don't know what you would do. It's just what your comfort level is and how far. So that's a tough one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say, speaking from personal experience, and I bet that you would say this too. I bet a lot of people would say this, is like, certain experiences will kind of color what your comfort level is in the future. And, what, as you learn, you'll kind of say, well, that, that's something that is important to me for the future. Something else that I was thinking of earlier when you were talking about, asking about, like, has an event been run before, when you're talking to a promoter for the first time, and thinking about things that I would share with new officials, someone who is new, chief effing a race for a first time. I would, this is a little bit of a tangent, I would also tell them, if possible, if they're able to reach out to previous officials who have officiated that event too. That is always an awesome thing to do. And it's not always possible, but if you're able to, and it depends on your local association, but if you are able to do that, like Dave said, being able to reach back to what's happened previous years at an event is super valuable to know, both from the promoter, what they might say the problem areas are safety wise, what a previous chief referee may say the problem areas are safety wise or otherwise. Those are always some awesome places to go resource wise for both safety and other things. Yeah, Dave made a great point with that. One thing that I wanted to bring up, kind of changing the subject a little bit, and that is, in the past, I'm going to say 30 years, I'm not really sure. Dave will have better dates on this. In the past 30 years, we have learned a lot more, and I say we in the general sense, the medical community has learned a great deal more about traumatic brain injuries and their effect on athletes in all sorts of sports. And so this has affected, high school sports, professional sports, contact sports, cycling, football, etc. And I know that this has affected equipment regulations, just other regulations in all sorts of sports. I would love to hear more from you, Dave, about how different sporting communities have changed and how cycling in specific has changed, as we learn more, as the medical community learns more about traumatic brain injuries and what to look for, and how we manage riders returning to events after they have potential traumatic brain injuries.
it, with the high school level, particularly being an athletic trainer at a high school, you have autonomy, you have control over those athletes. So that athlete is always going to be coming to you. You see that athlete day in and day out. Cycling, we don't. So one rider could ride in Indiana, have a bad crash, and have a potential head injury, and then ride to Illinois, come to Illinois and race, and we never know that something happened. So I don't know how we're going to do that nationally, um, or if there's, you know, at the high school level they have to go through return to play, and I don't know how we would do that through cycling, to a return to compete. I don't know how we do that. The research in protective equipment is always ongoing. It's it's a maker, it's always ongoing, and I was presented once at the high school level with a concussion proof helmet, and I said, you guys are nuts. I mean, there's no such thing. But
Right.
they build it as such, and
Mhm.
they said, oh, this is the best helmet on the market. It's concussion proof. No, it's not. Um, what's also interesting is an athlete, with equipment. Helmets nowadays are what, $200?
Mhm.
They're expensive,
Mhm.
and what we don't realize is that the UV rays play an effect on the softening of
Mhm.
the plastic. Our sweat is breaking down out.
Oh. Uh-huh.
So those helmets are really no good after a year or two. Hockey helmets, that the lacrosse helmets and hockey helmets, life of 3 years. And that means it could be on the shelf for 2 years and you
Oh.
buy it, it's only good for another year. So there's the actual sticker on there. So so helmets, I mean, they're making them better, they're making them more aero, they're making them vented. But just look at the history when they wear nothing to a little, leather hairnet, to now to what we're having today. And so we're getting there. It's getting there. Um, but to We had a summit some years ago, an official summit, and they brought up, we had somebody from the National Concussion, from the IOC, from the Olympic Committee, and talked about concussions and talked about how we as officials should um, evaluate a rider. So if a rider has a crash and they come into the pit, if you've worked at a pit from local level to the highest levels, it's crazy. People
Mhm.
are trying to get bikes put back together. They're looking at the rider, and now you're seeing, all of a sudden you see a cracked helmet. So do you let that rider back in? Do you not let the rider back in? What questions do you ask? How fast can you get those questions in a minute and a half? Because a minute and a half is about what we're looking at. 2 minutes, minute and a half for a lap. How
Maybe.
are you
Yeah.
going to do that? Yeah,
Right.
how are you going to do that? It ain't happening. So, I say cracked helmet, you're done. But you know, so it's we've got a ways to go in it, into putting that into any kind of format or regulation or anything like that. Um, uh, but it would take also a lot of education, not a lot, but it would take some on the officials' part, what to look for really quickly. You know,
Mhm.
um, usually when person comes into the pit, I look really fast at their bike and let the mechanics take care of the bike. I take care of the rider. I'm
Mhm.
looking at the rider. What is the rider looking at, to me? It's like, if they're not looking good, then I will take the time to talk to them more. But they're so hyped up, they want to get back in the race. Their
Right.
adrenaline is flying, flowing through them, and then, like a couple minutes into the race, they come back in and go, I don't feel good. And
Right.
they're yeah,
Yeah.
they're done. So, and those are the good those are the riders that are smart. They just go, I don't feel good after that crash. Here's how I'm feeling. And
Yeah.
I just go, yeah, good job. Come back for
Yeah.
coming back in and letting us know. Now let's take care of you. So
Yeah. Yeah. One of the hardest parts about that is when you hit your head, you're not thinking straight, so it's hard to, be smart about it.
yeah,
So it's yeah, it's hard to catch those, and it's hard to you know it's hard to evaluate as an official without any medical background of like, you don't look so great. But yeah, absolutely. It's and in that quick window of, if 20 riders come rolling up into the pit, checking them all out for free lap and helmets, and are they all looking okay? Yeah, it's a big one. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, Dave, I just wanted to add a comment. In 2017 or a few years ago in California, the state passed a law that said, any person that's involved with youth sports required to take the concussion protocol training and sudden cardiac arrest training. And the training's provided by the NFHS, the National Federation of High School Sports.
Right.
And that's possibly something that maybe USA Cycling, because we have to take safe sport. That's possibly something that USA Cycling could consider, right? That people just take the awareness training so they can recognize those signs and be aware, okay, there may be reasons why you need to pull somebody out because of injuries.
Okay, so in Illinois, to be a high school coach, you have to have concussion protocol training and also, CPR or cardiopulmonary resuscitation. So you have to have that. What was interesting, myself as an athletic trainer, besides being with USA Cycling, I'm also with USA Volleyball and USA Soccer. And with those, I've taken Safe Sport 3 times. And with I think soccer, I had to take a concussion exam, which was a breeze, but still, I felt looking at that little tool, I thought it was phenomenal. In that it it went over the very basics, and it didn't need like a medical degree to understand it. So I think that should be part of USA Cycling's officials program and coaches, and I think USA Cycling coaches should take it too, because if they are training an athlete, particularly on the track, and if they fall, then the coach could recognize signs and symptoms without an official being there. So I think it should be part of the whole program. It's very easy. It's online. You can take it, you can stop it, you can take it, you can stop it. It's very simple. I did it in I think 10 minutes. It's something very worthwhile. CPR, I think everybody should know it. Every period. I mean, that's just, we should all look out for one another on the course, off the course, or wherever. And we should, I think everybody should know CPR. So I'm an advocate of that. And also there's different kinds of CPR now. There's professional rescuer CPR that has everything, and then there's just just the compression CPR. So you don't have to do mouth to mouth. So there's different levels of training that you can do, and it's simple enough. So yes, so I agree that there are some things out there that could be implemented and not so much a pain. I mean, I know that HIPAA, I'm not HIPAA, I'm sorry, but with Safe Sport, a lot of people are like, oh my gracious, Safe Sport. I'm the same way, but I had to take it 3 times, so I know it really well. But the concussion thing is, I think it's a 2-year thing too as well, or it might be one-time thing. I don't know off the top because I only did it last year, and so it was, like I said, it was good, basic, and kind of an in and out thing. Just you learned it and you're done. It was pretty easy. So.
My next question is about, again, your medical background. Do you bring any equipment with you along with your other officiating gear that will help you deal with a medical accident or issue? And I'll give you an example. I know one motor ref brings these special surgical scissors or these special scissors with him as a motor ref. Just wondering if there's anything you add to your list of items that you pack from a medical perspective.
Yes, Band-Aids for my blisters when I ride my motorcycle. So, no, I don't, because if I it, it's kind of a separation. If I start treatment on a rider, or even as we'll say a spectator, say I'm riding, all of a sudden I see a spectator, then I'm going to be held accountable by my training. So I'm going to be held accountable as an athletic trainer and as a paramedic. So if I go back into the race and that person, treatment wasn't done, they can come back and say, you abandoned your patient. But for riders, if it's way out in the boonies, and if you have to stop, you try to do the best you can. But usually I don't bring a lot of stuff. So like the sounds like the scissors they bring were hemostats, where they could just clamp stuff off if they're doing a bad bleed. But it's you try to get medical there as quickly as possible. And some of our races, how do you get a hold of medical? I mean, you send out smoke signals. Sometimes it's like, the cell service sometimes is very, very spotty, and how do you deal with that? And that's one of the things that needs to be talked about in your pre-race talk with your organizer. Hey, how's the cell service out here? What blocks it? What communications do we have out on the road? How are we going to know if riders are hurt or not? And so, yeah. But no, I don't carry anything really special.
All right, and we have one more for you before we wrap up. So, obviously, we've been talking a lot about how you have these different skills and they allow you to perform a lot of different and sometimes overlapping roles. So recently, for example, at Joe Martin, you spent a few days driving the medical vehicle, which is a role that you were able to fulfill because of your medical background. And I think that's pretty cool that your background allowed you to, in addition to officiating, work at a bike race in a different capacity. And I say that as someone who has worked at bike races in a lot of capacities other than an official. So I don't know. I would love to hear a couple words from you on working at a bike race in other capacities than an official, and how that kind of helps learn more about cycling and how that can enhance being an official, seeing different sides of the race, and how that can make you a better official or get you more entrenched in the cycling community.
Driving the medical car at Joe Martin was an absolute blast. It was so much fun. First of all, the people I had in the car, between the doctors and the nurses, I had two different doctors and one nurse, and I think by the time they were done, they're now licensed officials, because we went over everything, and it was just so fun. We were talking bike talk, then all of a sudden we're talking about cardiac episodes, then we're talking about fractures, and then it went back and forth. It was just unbelievably fun. But from an official's standpoint, in driving a car and being an official, boy, you get to see parts of the race that we only get to talk about. This could happen, or this scenario could happen. I saw everything. Every scenario that we went over, from like, this is what you need to watch for. This is what it just proves that we can't be everywhere at once. And race directors and cyclists will act differently once they see, the blue shirt or an official. But they didn't know I was an official driving a medical car. And the things I saw was like, oh, that's 100. That's 200 Swiss francs right there. It's like, and they're saying why? So the doctors and nurses learned very well what a turbo bottle was, what a sticky bottle was, and it's just it's just fun. It was just really cool to see that. So if you ever get an opportunity to drive a car like that, or to be to do a VIP car or something like that, do it. I mean, it is like you go, oh my gracious. Now next time I'm like Motor 3 or Com 3, I'm going to look for that because that happens so many times, and it was so fun. It was so fun, and I had the opportunity to be part of, I think, 10 cool Tour Californias, so Amphion Tour Californias. I did that for, I think, almost 10 years, and I also did Tour of Utah and Colorado. I was the command between the bicycle race and the local entities. So Ryan, what you mentioned earlier about what do we talk about to the organizer, and how do we incorporate it at the day of the event? So I came in the day of the event, and all the bigwigs from like the race entity talked to all the bigwigs like the chiefs and the commanders, and then it was given to me and maybe a sergeant or a lieutenant, and they weren't part of the initial talks. So those bigwigs, they all talk, and they all say, "Oh, this is going to work out fine," until it hits the pavement, and then it starts going, not bad, but it starts going sideways, and now you have to make that straighten out. So I turned bicycle talk into police and fire talk, and police and fire talk into bicycle talk. Doing those, I learned so much. Listening to, I had um, I had four radios. So I had two base radios that were pretty powerful, and then I had two handheld radios. And I was listening to different channels. And we know as a com or as a motor official or time board, we usually have officials channel, and we have caravan channel. And so I was listening to the regulator, I was listening to the officials channel, and I was listening to the safety channel, and I was listening to all these different channels, and it was so awesome to listen to the talk and not be in the race, but put the race together by the talk. This is how professional that those crews were, is that you could sit there and listen and tell exactly where everybody was on the course and how they were supported. And so my job was to estimate when they would be coming to town, because in the town we had all of the festival stuff. So we had local rides, we had the VIP rides, and they all had to be off the course before like a rider like Peter Sagan came swishing through at 600 miles an hour and took them all out. So that was fun, and to learn how to time a race. Okay, if they're going this fast, what is their estimated time of arrival? And that's also in the tech guides and stuff like that. But to see how close those tech guides are, because sometimes when professional peloton wants to fly, oh my gracious, they fly. You could throw all those times out the window, because
Right.
they
Yeah.
they go where they want to go. So it's absolutely amazing. And so I've been blessed in that, and to understand how you know um, the caravan is supposed to work, how things are supposed to work. So to understand it is one thing, and then to understand it and put it into practical work, and to be safe out there. That the safety part of it. To make sure, the bottom line is what this talk is about, to make it safe. Um,
Mhm.
and it was so fun. I do this analogy with I call them the young Padawans, but the local officials, or some even younger officials. I say, what is the most important part of the race? And they go, and they just kind of give a blank stare. And I go, well, think of it as a double stuffed Oreo cookie. You have cookie crust in the front, you have cookie crust in the back, and you have fluff in the middle. I said the fluff in the middle is just going to follow the cookie crust. So the race is always moving forward. So always look at it as the cookie crust. You got to know where the leaders are, and then you got to know where the back end is. So the leaders don't become the back end. The back end doesn't become the lead. So everything else is fluff. It's just they're going to do what they're going to do. Like we always say, they're going to do what they're going to do. So if they want to, take a right turn instead of a left, they're going to do it. It's just, we can't, we can only make it safe that hopefully that the turn they make isn't going into traffic. But it's again, it's, trying to make it the overall safety. If you make it safe, I think the riders are going to have a fair shot at the day. And then I think the fun comes from everybody. I mean, even the crowd, the all the spectators and the riders themselves are going to have fun. And that's what it's about. So try to put that all together and find your way of doing it. And if you need to, reach out to somebody that's done it. I think Marcy made a very good point. I myself will reach out to other officials that have done races and say, hey, how did this go? How did this work out for you?
Yeah, I really appreciate all of the wonderful insight that all of your experience has given us, Dave. We would like to thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to have you join us at some point in the future. We'll see. Hopefully we keep this going for many, many years into the future. Right, Ryan?
Oh, yes, we have. At summer camp, we pretty much have the whole year lined up with who we want to interview and the topics. So yes, so there's a lot more to go.
Absolutely. So yeah, this is our wrap up on SAFE of our 3-part mini series, Safe, Fair, and Fun. And so next episode we'll do Fair with a yet to be announced guest. For our listeners, if you have any awesome ideas or suggestions, comments, concerns, only positive ones though, sorry. Not taking any criticisms at this time. Oops. Or if you would like to be a guest or know someone who would, please send them to usaf.officials.podcast@gmail.com. And I don't know if this is relevant once someone listens to it, but we can edit this out if need be. We haven't finalized where our podcast will be hosted, but please remember to like, subscribe, and comment once they are. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys.